For today's review, we are looking at Hal Jordan in his Green Lantern armored suit. And before I talk about the accessories and the figure, let's take a quick look at the data profile card. And as you can see, there is this beautiful comic book artwork of the character in his armored suit. And the source material is Superman, The Return of Superman. On the backside, you do have your usual read-up, and it reads, Hal Jordan evades missiles and enters Engine City. He tackles Mongol as a defeated Superman and Supergirl look on. Mongol gains the upper hand, injuring Hal's knee and arm, taunting him as his power ring has no effect on anything yellow. Hal fights the pain and uses his ring to make a suit of armor. He then hits Mongol with John Henry Irons' hammer. Hal meets up with Superboy, Supergirl, and John Henry Irons. They break through a heavy door and find Superman battling with the cyborg Superman. They choose not to intervene, and they watch Superman defeat the cyborg. After the battle, Hal contemplates using his ring to bring Coast City back. Now, this ending part is very interesting because is this correlated with what happens to the character where he becomes Parallax Hal Jordan? Let me know in the comments if you have read this story and what follows after, because this sounds like the plot to how he becomes Parallax Hal Jordan. I could be completely wrong here, but this is just what I'm remembering with that whole character. So, all right, that is the data profile card. Now, let's talk about the accessories that are included with this figure. And he does come with the same hammer accessory that we have seen before with steel, because of course he does use this to fight Mongol, and the figure does not want to stand, so let's just have him laying on the table. And as you can see, this time around the paint colors are a little bit more flatter. Like, there's not a whole lot of details, as I would say, with the paint, because if you look back at the one that came with steel, they at least painted it to look more like metallic, kinda, not exactly, but they also added these little like blue blemishing. I don't know what that's supposed to be. Is that supposed to be rust? Is that supposed to be some sort of cell shading? Didn't really understand what the whole blue stuff was, but at least it adds a little bit of detail to the hammer compared to the one that comes with Hal Jordan, where it just has this really flat looking color. But nonetheless, it is the same exact sculpt. Everything's the same plastic quality, which is one thing I don't like about this hammer because it's very flimsy and it can also warp really easily during hot weather. And at the moment, as I'm recording this, it is, of course, summertime. So, yeah, this is why he's not using this hammer or holding it, because it's going to warp. Okay, and that's pretty much all the accessories that he has. I don't usually count this thing because, well, we always get this anyways. So, all right, let's move on to the aesthetics. And this guy is very green, which I like, because when it comes to Green Lanterns, I always love the color green that they wear, and also their construct abilities, like the colors being this emerald color. So for this green color to basically form the construct color of his armored suit, I really like how bright it is, how vibrant it looks. And that's one of the weirdest things about the Mcfarlane DC Multiverse line, is the fact that they're always changing colors when it comes to the construct colors. Like, they don't ever make up their mind like which one is the actual one that is the primary color, because it's always different, right? So, you know, for example, this version of Hal Jordan, right, from the Dawnbreaker 2-pack, he came with, like, dark green color constructs. And then the Kyle Rayner figure that came with the Black Lantern wave had this color of a construct, which is a lighter green. So it's always different. So I don't know what's going on here, but, you know, I'm glad that this is a brighter green to match the whole lighter color thing, because I do like that. And for those wondering, does this figure glow in the dark because of those promo pictures? It does. And I will share a photo of what that looks like. I don't have the best camera quality, but I was able to actually take a photo of it, so you'll see that it does kind of glow in the dark. But if you wanted to, like, look like it's glowing really bright, you might need a flashlight with, you know, a lot of power to make this thing glow even brighter, I'm sure. So that's pretty cool, even though they don't tell you that it glows in the dark, because usually whenever something glows in the dark, there's always a label on it, right? But this one does not have a label, so kind of cool that they threw that in anyways. All right, let's zoom in onto the details. So, of course, this body buck is the same body buck we have seen before with steel, right? A lot of the parts on here are, of course, from that figure. Now, they did retool some areas just to add some new parts on here, so it's not exactly identical, but it's also not accurate to the source material as well. So if you are someone that cares about accuracy, this figure is not going to provide that to you, because as you can see, his torso armor and the shoulder is pretty freaking huge, right? Like, it doesn't even look like this at all with the figure. So, and that's what happens when you reuse a body buck from a previous figure. You're not going to get this sort of look. So if they sculpted a new entire figure entirely, it would definitely look like this. But, you know, these days, that's not how things are anymore. So, all right. Speaking of the new parts, let's start with his head sculpt. I do like the way that this head sculpt came out. I like the fact that he's smiling, I guess, right? Is that the expression? Not exactly. It doesn't seem like he's smiling. But he is kind of serious, right? He's in the middle of a fight with somebody, so that's pretty cool. And you do have these details on his helmet right here, right? All these little lines, like these vents and stuff. Really cool to see that there are sculpted details. Now, of course, one would be like, wow, these armor parts could be painted better. Well, of course they can, but you also have to remember that this is a construct ability, so technically it's not even supposed to be like this. Like, usually if it's like a construct ability, wouldn't it be like transparent? I don't know anymore. At this point, you know, even the picture doesn't show it being transparent, so who knows. But, you know, I'm fine with it being this flat color because it's not like an actual suit of armor that he's wearing that's a physical thing that he built. This is like a construct that will just fade away once he doesn't need it anymore. So, but I do like the whole sculpting thing, and I love all these little details on here, right? Even the shoulder. Now, this is the same part that we have seen on steel, but when you come to this torso area, you do have this really cool looking like armor frame right here. I love the giant Green Lantern logo and the fact that it is actually sculpted. It is not just printed on. This is a three-dimensional sculpt. So I really like that they weren't lazy with this part right here. And I remember when this figure was leaked, because, you know, there were early leaks of like figures that we were expecting to get this year. This figure got me excited because I was like, yo, it's a Green Lantern, it's Hal Jordan again, and he's wearing like an armored suit. That looks freaking awesome, right? Even if I don't know the context of why he's wearing the suit, I still like this whole aesthetic thing. So, yeah. So you do have these little details right here, right? And on the back side, this is what I like the most here. Look at that. It takes so much inspiration from, you know, a lot of armored suits that we've seen before. You have this sort of spinal design right here in the center. You have all these little details on the side. Maybe these are vents. I don't know what those are supposed to be, but they are part of the backside of his armor to protect the front and back part of his body. So that's pretty cool. And when it comes to the parts that are reused, of course, when you go down to his ab muscles, these are the same parts again from steel. And then when you go to his arm, he has different looking gauntlets. So when it comes to matching the source material a little bit, I guess you can say, the arm gauntlets are kind of similar. Not exactly, but they do have that circular disc. So there's that. And you could probably panel line these areas with black ink to make them stand out, which is something you could probably do. That would actually make some of these areas actually stand out more, just like what I said with our previous figure that we looked at, which was the final Batsuit. So yeah, that's something that you can do if you want to. And then for his waist area, this of course is the same part again. Nothing new there. And then when you go down to the bottom of his legs, everything down here is, of course, the same as well. So the only new areas is basically this gauntlet right here for both arms, the upper torso right here being retooled, and his head sculpt. And everything else is reused. Now, they also added another detail on here, which, you know, I guess it depends on how you like it. If you don't like this sort of thing, cell shading, which, honestly, to me, cell shading doesn't really work if you're just going to paint it in this way. There's a way to do cell shading in a better way, which I've seen on some other action figures before, but those action figures are more expensive, right? But in terms of the budgeted action figure, to me, this doesn't really look like cell shading. It just looks like a bunch of squiggly paint marks on here. And, you could probably call this battle damage. You can call it whatever. But if you don't like this stuff on here, you can easily get rid of this. I've seen people, do that with a lot of those VHS Marvel Legend X-Men with the cell shading sort of thing that they had going on. People just used like, was it nail polish? I don't remember what they were using, but they got rid of the lines because it just didn't look good. So, but in this case, does it look all right? I think it's fine, but also not the best. And that's pretty much all the details of this figure when it comes to the aesthetics. Really, everything else on here is pretty much identical. And now, since we are talking about comparisons, well, let's start with this comparison first, and then we'll move on to other comparisons later. Let's put these two together. And you can clearly see that there is some similarities, of course, a lot of them, and some differences, right? Head sculpt is different. Their torso is a little bit different because of the way that it's been retooled for this guy over here. Shoulder armors are exactly the same. Arm gauntlets are different. The hands are exactly the same, just repainted in a different color. And then when you look at the bottom of their legs, it is exactly the same as well. And then when it comes to a cape, he has one, he does not. So, yeah, does it work in this case for Hal Jordan to reuse the steel body buck? I would say it's okay. It's fine if you're going to go with the armored look. But again, going back to that whole thing about accurate depiction, yeah, this is not the figure that you would expect for that. So if you're disappointed that it doesn't look like the source material, I feel you, all right? Because, we've seen a few figures in this line that doesn't even look like the source material. And, it is what it is, unfortunately. Okay, now that we covered the aesthetics, let's talk about the articulation. And, yeah. So, for this guy, his legs don't have the same problems with my steel figure. I think it just might be a quality control issue on that one. So, what happened was his legs, for some reason, don't want to kick out. Like, they're, like, really stiff, like the joint. And I've heated it up before, and I'm scared to, like, break this figure because, I don't have a chance to get another one, and I don't want to break anything. So this is why the legs don't really pose well for this guy on my shelf in terms of action poses. This guy, however, let's start with those legs. They actually kick out. And it's not like a great kick, but it still moves better than, this. Because his legs are so stiff. I don't know. So this is the difference here, right? As you can see. So that's why this might be a quality control issue on that steel figure. As for doing the splits, look at that. You can do the splits no problem. This leg can also kick out with no issues. There is like thigh swivel and also double jointed articulation works okay. It's pretty tight still because it's a new copy. You also have the articulation down here with the feet and swivel, a little bit of swivel and toe articulation. So yeah, leg articulation works fine on this figure mold. It's okay. It's not the best, but at least, his legs actually kick out. So that's good to know that my original steel figure was just a quality control issue. Okay, let's move on to the head sculpt. He can look up actually pretty good. So if you want to get him into a flight pose, that's going to work. He can't really look down the best because of the fact that he has this under part of his helmet or mask, whatever you want to call it. He also can turn his head left and right with no issues, tilting to side, no issue at all. And that's pretty much the articulation for the head sculpt. It's okay. For his arms, he can lift out that high. It will run into the shoulder armor here, so swinging upward like this will be hindered. Going back will also be hindered, so you can't do the whole 360 all the way around unless you do something like this. So, which I guess works. So there's that. But do be careful, because, you know, this could pop off or break if you're not careful with how you move the arms. He does have double jointed. He also has the bicep swivel. He has the swivel in the hands and articulation in the wrist. Let me see if it works. Oh, it does work a little bit, as you can see. It does get hindered by this part right here of his gauntlets for his arms, so it's not the greatest. When it comes to his torso, it does not want to rotate at all. And let me see, was this the same problem with steel? No, actually, steel can... Huh. Yeah, it's just a new copy. I might have to heat that up or put them into some hot water for a bit. But yeah, it's really freaking tight for some reason. But when it comes to, you know, what's it called? Leaning forward. You can lean forward okay. Leaning back, not exactly really leaning back at all. For his waist rotation down here, it does move. So yeah, pretty good. And that's pretty much all the articulation on this Hal Jordan figure. It's all right. That's the best way to describe it. It's good enough. It will do some of the action poses that you want him to do. And now, before I get into the remainder of the comparisons, let me show him holding a weapon. And we're not going to have him hold this weapon because that's kind of, you know, I don't like that on his hand because it will start, warping. I prefer him with this sword. I think he looks really cool with this freaking sword right here. So let me just put this into his hand really quickly. I'll just show you really easily. Look at that. I think he looks really cool with the Kyle Rayner sword. It just makes him look even more badass, especially since he's wearing this armor. So let me get him into a sort of pose where he has it. Look at that. That just looks really cool. I don't know. I like him with this sword, okay? So this is what I'm sticking with. And all right, now it's time for some comparisons. And we are going to bring in some other Hal Jordan figures that we have gotten in this line. So let's start, of course, with the Dawnbreaker 2-pack version. This was the first time we ever got a regular Hal Jordan. So there's that. Here he is next to the Parallax Hal Jordan. Oh, please stand. Okay, we're good. He's not going to fall over. There he is. And then here he is next to the Walmart Gold Label Hal Jordan. Very different. And last but not least, here he is next to the Silver Age version of Hal Jordan. And yeah, pretty cool. Now, for me, I think these two work together better because I can't imagine him inside the suit of armor. But I guess you can leave it to preference. Maybe it's this version wearing the armor, you know, whichever Hal Jordan you think fits in this sort of display here. So, but yeah, that's pretty much going to be it for comparisons for today's video. And if you found this review of the armored suit Hal Jordan informative, give this video a like. If you want to subscribe to the channel for more action figure content and whatever else I do on here, it would be much appreciated. And with that said, take care, and I will see you in the next video.